Hey guys.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, oh, I love the background for yeah, love it.
Hi everyone. I think we've got Nicole. Hi attendees. I think we've got people joining now. I realize, yeah, mine says President Sydney High School All Boys Union. I am not the president for those attendees and everyone joining, but I am using that account right now. So I guess, yeah, we've already got 12 attendees joined. So let me do the very brief intro and then hand it over. So my name is Max Kwetsky. I'm part of the Old Boys Union, and we're helping obviously put these together. We've got some. I'm very excited by the speakers we've got for you guys today, and Kerry as the moderator. So I think I'm the boring guy. So let me hand it over to the more exciting guys, and Kerry, over to you.
No worries. Thank you, Max. Firstly, thank you to all the Year 12 students who are joining us here today. I know you're in a very, very busy stage of your year, so really appreciate you spending the time with us today. I'd also like to thank Max and Arthur from the Sydney High Old Boys Union for putting this event together today. Obviously, we're kicking off with the technology stream, but for those who don't know, we're embarking on the first of 6 panel sessions over the next 2 weeks. So appreciate the opportunity to kick off and moderate this panel today. Finally, a huge thank you to today's panel participants, Nicole Pendkar, Vinod Nandakumar, and Aaron Tran. Special thanks to Aaron, as it's actually 11:30 p.m. local time for Aaron. I think he's in San Francisco right now. So thank you very much, Aaron. Yeah, I guess I'd like to first kick off by asking each of you to spend 5 minutes to talk about what you're currently doing with yourselves. Nicole, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'll give you a quick summary of what I'm doing now, and also then a quick summary of, I guess, what led me here in terms of the process all the way from high school till now. But look, guys, it's been about 12 years since I finished up with high school. At the moment, I'm running a sport tech startup. If you know the movie Moneyball by Brad Pitt, trying to do something similar in the Aussie sports market. I guess day-to-day wise, obviously I'm the founder of the company. So we are a small company with a handful of people. So it involves sort of, being wearing many hats and being across the tech team, a person in marketing, and also just most importantly at the moment, trying to get out there and actually do some networking and business development, try to get more clients on for the work that we're doing. I guess in terms of, or I think Kerry, you just alluded to the fact that you'll have a few different streams and a lot of information available to you from different people throughout this week. So I think why I was really excited about doing this was that I definitely can bring a broad and unique background into my conversation. I haven't gone down the traditional path of being really successful at university into a traditional grad role with a big 4 company, perhaps, and then go into tech startups. I went out completely different avenues. So I did a commerce degree at Macquarie Uni, which I think I was one of like 4 students out of the 200 people cohort, Sydney High, to go to Macquarie Uni. After that, I actually did something completely non-technical, HR and recruitment, for a couple of years, and found that it definitely wasn't for me. But I coincidentally happened to fall into data science and analytics, so tech recruitment, where I sort of realized, wow, okay, these people are a lot more interesting than I used to think they were. And the work definitely was a lot more interesting than I originally thought. And then essentially when COVID hit a couple of years ago, a lot of the people that were sort of, 10 years out of high school, had gone through uni, gone through their careers, and got to the point where they're like, well, wow, okay, really sort of having a think about what they're doing. And so did I. So I decided to actually pursue my passion, which was sport. I definitely wasn't going to be playing sport for a living anymore. So I guess genesis of what is now Wiki, my sports analytics tech startup, started a couple of years ago, and that's what I'm pursuing full time.
Amazing. No, thank you, Nicole, for sharing. Vinod, would you mind sharing a little bit more about what you're doing now and your journey to this point today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a machine learning scientist at Amazon in Australia. My team focuses on algorithms for Amazon search. So specifically, algorithms that can be used on Amazon's retail app using image and text queries. So it uses a lot of machine learning, and a lot of machine learning is mathematics, and a lot of machine learning is coding. So it's a mixture of applied maths and coding. My background going back to high school and university is also in mathematics, but more theoretical aspects. So at Sydney Boys, I spent most of my time with maths competitions, like maths Olympiad competitions, along with Anthony Morris and Vin Pham. You might have heard of them, but this was in around 03 or 04 or 05. At University of Sydney, I continued with theoretical maths, and my PhD was also in theoretical maths in America at MIT in Boston. I came back home to Sydney after that. I worked at the University of Sydney for a few years in the maths department before switching to computer science and then joining Amazon. This is my first industry role.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Vinod. Aaron, would you mind sharing a bit about your background and what you're doing currently?
Yeah, so I'm Aaron. I'm the CEO and founder of Workflow 86. We are a B2B SaaS platform that provides a no-code platform for automating complex internal business processes. So we allow large organizations to automate a lot of the processes which might otherwise be done manually. I am class of 2010. I guess followed in some ways quite a conventional path. So did well in my HSC, got, a high ATAR, felt compelled to go into law school, went into law school, I wouldn't say it was, something that I really enjoyed, but it was something which, and it's something which I'll talk about later, but it was something which I thought I was expected to do rather than what I actually wanted to do. So I, followed out through law school. Again, persisted enough to get good grades in law school, get a clerkship at Herbert Smith Freehills, one of the big law firms in Australia. Really didn't like that, felt really miserable there. Then I jumped into consulting, management consulting, thinking that that would be better. Lasted about a year and a half there before I decided, I think at that point that, working in a corporate environment really wasn't for me. From there, I went into my first startup. We got into the UNSW Founders Accelerator program, and that provided the initial funding for that. And then from there, around about 2020, when COVID hit, is when I started my current startup, Workflow 86. We spent about a year working on that, raised a bit of funding from local investors. Then November last year, we got into Y Combinator. So Y Combinator is the world's, I guess, most famous startup accelerator. It's been an early investor in sort of many companies you might be familiar with, like Dropbox, Airbnb, Reddit. So we got into that. We finished that program around about early this year, March. We raised our seed round from one of the best investors, I guess, in Silicon Valley. Hasn't been publicly announced yet, so I can't name the investor, but we're very excited to have them on board. And yeah, that's exactly where I guess we're at now, building out the company. As a founder, I guess at this point, really a lot of my role is about hiring people, setting the vision for the product, and making sure that the team performs as at its optimal and at its best. Yeah, that's essentially where we're at now. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. And appreciate all you guys sharing a bit about what you're doing now and the journey that you've undertaken to get to today. And I think what's great about all three panelists is that they all have very, very different and diverse backgrounds. So no doubt, lots of different experiences that we're going to go down and talk through over the next, 45, 50 minutes of this panel. I guess maybe we can start with, your time at High. Nicole, tell us about your time at High, and I guess how did you decide on what you were going to study at university?
Cool. Well, I'll kick this off again with my time at High and my sort of experiences and thought process was probably quite different to a lot of the guys that I studied with. But just I guess, yeah, I was trying to jog back the memories just before this call. But time at High was awesome. I personally loved cricket. That was probably the number one passion in life, and still is. So I love my sport at high school. But I think the number one thing that I kind of really appreciate about my time in high school, and especially when you think about it after high school, is that no matter what you were into, whether it was one of the sports, whether it was like debating, music, whatever, or purely just academics, you were largely, mostly you were accepted for who you were and what you were passionate about. So no matter what you're actually interested in, you could pursue that 100%, and I absolutely love that, right? So that was probably like my number one memory now that I look back on it. A couple of other things that stand out. Well, I'll mention one specific thing. I still remember this. This was close to 15 years ago, and it still stands out in my memory. But I still remember one of my cricket coaches saying to me after training one day, is like, look around you, look at your friends. You can replace cricket with whatever activity you're now passionate about, but look around you and the memories that you create, in this training session or today at school. It's more likely that you'll think about your best memories at training or whatever else. It's more likely you'll remember that than whatever ATAR you end up getting in year 12. And it's not to say that the ATAR isn't important. Of course, you got to study hard and you got to work hard. You got to get the best possible marks. That'll set you up for university and beyond. But I think just like really being appreciative of what you're doing in life at the moment, your friends and your activities, really making the most of that. I think decision making wise, again, I was really fortunate having a subcontinental background. A lot of parents do tend to pressure you quite a bit in terms of you should do this or you should do that. I was pretty fortunate to have parents that were, I guess, understanding that, doing one of the, med law or whatever else wasn't really indicative of my strengths or my interests. So they'll have, luckily, they were open to, I guess, different avenues for my career. And for me, it was pretty straightforward. Like I always loved business and commerce. So I ended up doing commerce at Macquarie, and it was a pretty straightforward process. But I think now that I think back on it, like a lot of the friends that I started with, a lot of the pressure, I think Aaron might have alluded to this as well, like a lot of the pressure that you go through, sorry, I think it's really important, and you'll face these decisions not just in high school, but you'll see them again end of university. You'll see them again when you sort of finish up with your grad job and probably a few years into your career. Like I think Aaron and myself both alluded to when COVID hit and everyone had a lot of time to think about what they're doing with their careers. So I think just sort of really getting to know who you are, but also having, this might be addressing one of the other questions, but if you are looking to speak to other people that for advice, mentorship, or whatever it is, you're 16, 17, 18, try to have a conversation with someone that's studying, potentially in the degree that you might be interested in. That's always great. But if you can, try to extend beyond that and try to have a chat with someone that's maybe in a grad role, right? Like just finished university. And I think just as importantly, try to have a chat with someone that's maybe 4, 5, 6 years into their career, because I think the different answers that you get from people will be quite indicative of how someone that goes down that path progresses. And you at 16 might think that the degree that you're studying is really interesting. But maybe after 4 or 5 years of the degree, a couple of years of the grad program, it's not exactly what you think it is at the moment. So I would just say get a broad range of feedback before you, I guess, lock in what you're going to be studying.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, Nicole. Vinoth, you highlighted earlier that a large part of your high school experience or your time at high school was spent, competing at the very highest level at maths Olympiads. I guess for you, how then did you decide what to study at university, and how did all the maths tie into your path down the machine learning element?
So at Sydney Boys and in high school, I focused on maths Olympiads competitions, at least much more on that than on high school subjects. And after finishing high school, I was a bit disappointed that I didn't get a gold medal at the International Olympiad. most years Australia doesn't get a gold medal. It's quite difficult. So I wanted to prove that I could accomplish something, and the pure maths department at the University of Sydney, there's a lot of exciting research in theoretical maths. That was pretty much the closest thing to what I was doing in high school. So I focused on that. I was mentored by Professor Anthony Henderson, who incidentally did get a gold medal for Australia back in 1991, a long time ago. And after that, I finished my undergraduate degree as quickly as I could and applied for PhDs in maths. And went to MIT in America, which was a wonderful experience. What was the last part of your question?
I guess
again?
how did all that culminate into you, doing machine learning at Amazon where you are currently? I guess what brought you to corporate land after being in academia for such a long time as well?
Yeah, so one of my classmates at Sydney Boys joined Google immediately after undergraduate. So I kept in touch with him and asked him about what life's like at Google and what opportunities there are for big tech, for scientists in big tech companies. And in grad school, I met many other people who joined big tech companies like Google, Facebook, also Amazon. So after a few years of academia, it wasn't really working out for me. I wanted something with more tangible applications. And I started talking to my friends in big tech. I applied with a referral and joined a machine learning team. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing. Thank you. Aaron, I know obviously you've briefly described about your very interesting journey from studying a combined arts and law degree to now being a founder of a Y Combinator, funded business startup. Sorry, I get the sense that a lot of this, a lot of your journey was you trying different things, seeing what you liked and didn't like, and I get the sense that a lot of it, was a curiosity and passion for learning, which led you down the path you are now. I guess how important was it for you to go down paths where you felt consistently challenged and wanting to grow and learn?
Yeah, so I guess I'll give a little bit more background about my time in high. Like, I mentioned that I did really well enough to get into, UNSW law, but, year 7, 8, 9, 10, probably, I was probably one of the lowest performers in our cohort. And really, for whatever reason, was able just to switch things on in year, 10, 11, 12. And I think a lot of that just had to do with, again, being able to find some kind of internal motivation or drive to actually work hard and persist at something. And so that is probably the key thing that, if you're talking about like, which path do you go down towards, is really about like, in what environment are you driven to perform at your best, right? And you won't know that unless you try, lots of different things, unless you try working in a corporate environment, unless you try working, at a big four, KPMG, PwC, whatever, at a big law firm, whatever. Like, you won't know that until you try it. And I think after about 6 months, you'll get a sense of like, now that I'm here, is this where I'm performing at my peak, at my best, right? And for me, it became very quickly clear that, I could probably spend the rest of my life working at, a law firm or at a big consultancy or something, but I would never feel like I was giving 100%. Like, I would never feel like this was me doing absolutely everything that I could do. And there were a whole bunch of reasons for that. I think different people have different motivations. And again, it's really about you need to figure out what turns on that switch inside of your head. Is it being in a structured environment where, people tell you, okay, this is the right way to do it. And, you get performance reviews every 6 to 12 months and, that kind of structured environment? Or is it an environment really where it's utter chaos, right? It's every day is an absolute roller coaster. Every day is absolute, up and down. But you control a lot more of, what you're doing and, what direction you're going. And that's sort of more of the entrepreneurial path. And again, you won't know unless you try it. So I guess that's sort of what sort of really drove the importance of, like you said, having those different experiences. Because I think the other thing that I've realized, it's very easy to fall into something and then just be there for the rest of your life. It was something that I noticed when I was at Free Hills, was I would see lawyers there who, really hated being lawyers, but they'd been lawyers for 20, 30 years. And they'd been there just because they just got comfortable to it. They just got kind of numb to, they just got kind of used to being paid, a really high salary. Not that it was their life calling. Well, it wasn't, what they really wanted to do. It just, they just kind of got stuck into it. And, when you go into a corporate office, you'll find the same thing. And, it was just, when I looked at that, I always found it kind of depressing. So that's why I think you need to have those experiences and really challenge yourself as to is this where I want to be in 10, 20, 30 years, essentially. So, yeah.
No, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Aaron. I think so I actually realized I forgot to introduce myself. So I'm going to take a step back here. I'm from class of 08, and very much similar to what Aaron mentioned a bit earlier, had a very diverse range of experience as well. So from working in Big Four professional services to Big Four banking to corporate in strategy to, being a co-founder of a startup. And what Aaron just mentioned, highly resonates with my experience as well. I don't mean to get philosophical here, but at the end of the day, we live in Australia, and irrespective of what you do, whether you go to uni, complete uni, whatever you do, we're going to be pretty comfortable, and we're going to be okay. So I think, what Aaron highlighted is pretty pertinent, resonated very strongly with me. So thank you for sharing. I guess moving on now, I guess I'm going to open it up to all three panel members now today. Open up to all three panel members now. If you were in year 12 today, how would you think about your decision about what to do after school? Would you have considered alternate paths, maybe a gap year or potentially a trade, or, how would you think about that decision, if you're in year 12 right now?
Well, I was actually just going to carry on from what Aaron was saying just then. So I think in terms of making this decision, look, I think I always try to think about how many people are going through this journey and what most people will be going through. So if I'm assuming there's still 180 to 200 guys finishing up year 12 at our school these days. So if that's the case, I think most people will likely be considering university. And I think if you're going down that path, Aaron made an excellent point in terms of what is actually going to get the 100% out of you in terms of your motivation and your focus. And I think one way that I'll try to phrase it a slightly different way, right? So if you're in year 12 at the moment, think back to when you were in year 7, or if you see year 7 kids walk past you. I know when I was in year 12, they used to look tiny, right? It feels like, oh my God, they're so young, they're so much smaller and so much younger, right? So if you essentially think about it this way, when you start university, by the end of university and when you get into your grad job, that's roughly 6 years as well. So have a think about when you're making this decision, have a think about what the four of us have just told you. The next sort of 6 to 12 years, you're not making this decision in terms of what you want to study and what you want to do to lock yourself in for the next 30, 50 years, right? This isn't 1950 anymore. Whatever you end up doing, having a broad range of experiences and the opportunity, as Kerry just mentioned, obviously living in Australia, we've got the opportunity to obviously have quite a diverse lifestyle here. and you can actually make changes. Like you might start off with arts and law, you might realize a couple of years into it, you really like analytics or whatever it may be. So don't get too stressed about specifically, oh my God, this is going to decide the rest of my life, because that's just not true, right? So have a think about what you like at school. That's a really good starting point, right? So whether it's sport, debating, academics, whatever, think about like what you genuinely enjoy. And think, as I said before, think about if you're lucky enough to have the opportunity to do this, have a chat to people at university, starting their work and maybe a few years into their career, and see how those things align. And I think the other thing Aaron mentioned was a really good point around structured and unstructured, big companies, little companies, etc. That is difficult. You are right. Like you do need to kind of actually go in there and actually experience it for yourself. But honestly, like I was a tech recruiter for 5 years. I ran my own business for half of that. Spoke to hundreds of people making these decisions. At the end of the day, it's pretty, so like most of it you can understand just from a conversation with anyone in terms of larger company, more structure. You're doing a smaller piece of work and you get to perfect that. Usually less pressure. Smaller company, chaos. You got to wear many hats, and it is obviously unstructured. So just have a real think about like who you are and how that aligns. And I think that can help your decision making quite a bit, because I think when you get down, especially when you get down 2 or 3 options, you usually have an instinct for what you think you'd be suited to. And honestly, in a way, you'd rather go with your instinct first up. And worst case scenario, 3 to 5 years down the track, if it doesn't work out, as we've all just kind of spoken to you about, you will likely go through many careers and sort of many different career paths throughout the next sort of few years. So don't stress too much. Have a think about what you want and sort of follow that path first, because you can always change if you need to down the track.
Awesome. No, thank you, Nicole. Aaron, Binoth, did you have any sort of thoughts around how you'd approach going about your decision if you were in year 12 right now?
Yeah, I would be I think potentially a lot of you will have a very sort of specific idea of what you think you want to be or what you want to do. And to quote Vinod Khosla, one of the sort of very famous venture capitalists that I was actually able to meet, he says something quite interesting. He was doing a speech to some MBA students at Stanford, and he said that 90% of people will do what they think is expected of them, not what they actually want to do, right? And I think that's very true for sort of a cohort like Sydney Boys, where people tend to be high performing, and so you think that you need to do commerce, or you think you need to go into law, or you think you need to go into medicine, because that is what is expected of you. I think the main thing is don't optimize for what is expected of you, and optimize more for figuring out what you actually want to do. And so really, I think when you're 16, 17, 18, your focus should not be on, picking one thing and just doing that. You should actually be optimizing for breadth of experience, right? The worst thing you can probably do is sort of like what I said before, right? Like you think that this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life at 16, 17, 18. And then you travel along that path for 10, 6, 12, 20 years. And it's only really at the end of that road that you realize, holy shit, that's not what I actually want to do. So I think the way you avoid that is really, take as many of those, sample as many of those paths as you can. So you actually have an idea that, this is actually where I feel most comfortable. This is where I perform at my best. This is what I actually want to do, not what other people expect me to do. And so I guess the other aspect into this, to factor into this, is many of you probably will be influenced or, potentially pointed into a particular direction by your peers, by your parents, by your teachers. And for the most part, I think they mean well. But, there's one of the things you learn, particularly as a founder, is like, you cannot delegate critical decisions to others. Like it's really your responsibility to make those decisions yourselves. And there is probably no more of an important decision than, again, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do at university? What are you going to do once you leave university? So I think it's like, talk to people, and listen to, what I guess, your teachers are saying, your parents are saying, etc. But like, do not let that be what actually dictates what you end up doing. Because again, once you start delegating, like what path you take down in life to other people, I think like that's historically just been a way to end up sort of very miserable, I guess, at some point later down the track. So that would be my advice. Like, don't stress about like, this is what I want to do, and if I don't do it, then like that's it. Like that's the end of the world, right? Like literally, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm very happy that I'm not a lawyer. And yeah, it's kind of like where you're at right now, even more so for people, I guess, of your generation. Like there is so much changing, and there's so much, and the speed of change is also so fast that I think, yeah, like you should be optimizing not for like this specific thing I want to do, but more around, how can I get the most experiences, the most breadth of, different experiences and, ideas, and really, being able to make your decisions based on that, essentially. Yeah. So optimize for breadth of experience. Don't get too caught up with like one particular thing. Yeah.
Awesome. No, thank you, Aaron. Thanks, Nicole, for that. Your previous insight as well. I guess another open question to the panel members: how was university different to high school? I know Aaron mentioned, structured versus unstructured earlier. I think during high school, a lot of your day is quite formally structured. Obviously, you've got X number of periods you have per day. You need to take X number of hours, of subjects in per course per week. University tends to be a little bit more unstructured. It is what you make of it. But I guess, how was your university experience different to your high school experience?
Yeah, I think that makes a big difference. Sydney Boys is already better than many other high schools in the sense that extracurricular activities are encouraged. But in spite of that, it is a very structured environment where students have to attend classes for 8 hours a day. And university is much better in the sense that if you think a class is too easy, you don't have to attend. You can just do the homework assignments and that's enough. And if you want to talk to a professor about a research project that you want to work on, you can do that as well. You don't have to spend all your time studying for exams. And if you want to do an internship in industry, there are lots of resources available for university students. It's also a lot larger than City Boys, so it can be isolating at times if you're not. But again, it's relatively easy to meet people in university, so that should not be a major concern. Does that answer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, thanks for sharing. Nicole, Aaron, how was your university experience different to high school?
Yeah, I mean, university for me was like largely, the way I sort of look back at it, was largely the same as high school, in the sense that university is about, you take courses. Yes, you get a bit more liberty with, being able to choose what you want to do. And inside the course, you get a bit more liberty with, like say you have an assignment, you can pick, what you want to do that assignment on, or what you want to write your thesis on, or whatever. But at the end of the day, university still comes down to this very structured way of like, you do this course, you do this assessment, you get this grade, all your grades get added up. And then that grade determines whether, you get into the top law firm or like you don't get anything, basically. And it's in that sense, it's very similar to, high school, where, you do your courses, it's very structured, you get a grade, and that's kind of it. What I will say is like, and this is probably like one of the controversial things that I sincerely do believe, but one of the problems with going to Sydney Boys and then going to, UNSW, USyd, and being in that environment, that sort of environment where you're constantly being assessed, exams, blah, blah, you get the impression that success, or like the world, is a meritocracy, right? You think that if you work hard, you're really smart, you put in your hours, you're going to be successful. And that is, I think, a lie, right? You can be very smart, very hardworking, but the most successful people I've met have not really necessarily been the smartest, the hardest working. They've not really been the people who got the best grades. There's a really interesting saying, or I think it's actually a book, that's like, A students work for managers who got Bs, who work at companies started by people who got Cs, right? It's really like, you kind of realize that grades and that whole mentality of being assessed against, criteria set by other people is like, it's not really how the real world functions. So I would say that high school and university, they're very the same in that sense. It's like, you'll go into an environment where you will be assessed by other people, and your performance, how what you can achieve, is really determined by that kind of criteria. Whilst the real world is not necessarily like that. So yeah.
No, 100%, here, and I agree where you're coming from, Aaron.
Hey, I'm sorry for randomly laughing, but Aaron, that quote that you just mentioned, there's a slight variation of it, and I found it extremely inspiring. I'm trying to find the right version of it. I think this is it. Less relevant for here, but it's still interesting. So B people hire C people, C people hire D people, and only A people hire A plus people. I don't know how much that strikes a chord to the high school students here, but being someone who's been sort of like a team leader or manager or founder for a large period of my career, I absolutely love that quote. But yeah, coming back from the tangent, back to university. I think, again, I'm going to provide a very different perspective. When I finished high school, as I said, I only wanted to do business and commerce. I was pretty lazy around year 12 and lazy at probably opposite to Aaron. I was probably lazy at the wrong time. I ended up missing out on sort of UNSW and Sydney Uni, and ended up going to Macquarie University, which was a 3-hour trek from my house, return every day, which is not fun. In terms of the experience, I think, look, honestly, like I love business, I love commerce, but I'm not a very theoretical person. For me, it was like, I want to work, I want to make money, I want to actually apply the things that, well, I'm interested in. So from like my perspective, I think it's really, and me as an individual, but also the me that ended up being a recruiter and actually speaking to hundreds of people in terms of their careers. I think the number one thing I would say, especially if you're planning to go down the tech path, is when you are studying, obviously, try to get good grades, and that's obviously important. But I think internships and like real life work experience is critical. And I think even within internships, there's variations. I've spoken to people who have done internships at big companies and just sat there and watch YouTube videos or whatever, and that's what their 3-month internship was. But at our company, we've got a couple of university students, final year university students that work in analytics with our company, and they are literally using Python, SQL, actually helping to build statistical models. Essentially, they're doing the same work that anyone else would do, even if they've graduated. So I think if you do go down the tech career path, and you're doing a 4-year degree, for example, whatever. And I think when you graduate, you can make your own decisions on whether you go work at small companies or big companies. But I think while you're studying, it would really pay off to work in a small to medium, whether it's a company or a team, but where you can actually get hands-on tech experience. And that happens to be like a paid gig that you're doing over a year or two, great. Whether it's a summer internship, that's great as well. But just getting actual hands-on experience, you'll differentiate yourself from everyone around you. And also, it's funny, like when I speak to the guys that are working with us right now, they go back to university and do their courses, and it's like child's play. It's like clean data, everything's all set up for you. It's relatively easy. Whereas obviously working in real life environment, it's definitely not as simple. So that'd be my one big one. Try to get as much work experience, hands-on as much as possible while you're studying.
No, awesome, Nicole. And I think alluding to what you just said, I think a large part of your experience at uni, it is what you make of it. What I'd say to that is, there are going to be so many hours of the day where, you have at your own dispersal, and if you want to, do nothing and watch YouTube compared to, like Nicole said, embarking on internships or I believe, Aaron, you were teaching yourself coding whilst you were, working, whilst you were still in the law firm or consulting. Sorry if I got it wrong. I think it's, your time is what you make of it. I think that's really, really important to point out as well. I've got a question here from N. Question for Aaron. Going by what you said about not being dictated by norms, don't you think it is required to do so to progress? Would you have progressed to where you are now without having the education and experience as a lawyer? The basic steps you took help open the doors to lead where you are now. Would you mind sort of commenting?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I often ask, like, what value did I get of studying law for 6 years? I mean, law does teach you some valuable skills about being analytical, about being sort of, very detail orientated. In some ways, I guess that has helped, get me where I am. But it's also, on the flip side, taught me some very bad habits, right? So law is a very risk-averse profession. It's a profession obsessed with getting things perfect. And that is not a good, those aren't good habits to sort of develop when you're trying to run a company or, founding a company. I think that if you're talking about, like, did the people I meet during law sort of help me open the doors? I think it's like the question there is whether, did law open doors that would not have been opened otherwise? It's hard to say. Like, I would err to say that not really, because I wouldn't say that my network in law really, I guess, helped in, getting to where we are. I think probably the most helpful network, to be honest with you, is actually, the people you meet at university outside of your degree. So during, university, I founded a sports club at UNSW, and it was really the people that I met out of that I found were, the most helpful. And really, actually, the community that you meet in high as well, your peers, the other people in your year group, that's probably going to be one of the most powerful networks that you'll ever get. And so, yeah, I guess, if I stayed in law as a lawyer, then, all the people I met, I'm sure, would have been a great network to, go to another law firm and, go in-house or whatever. But I guess this comes back to the point where, like, you can make very dramatic pivots in your career and what you do. And, if you're persistent enough, if I think there was another question around, like, how do you actually open up those networks and opportunities? And YC is very big on this idea of, like, most people don't get those opportunities just because they don't ask, right? And so, when I started in startups, I didn't know anyone in startups, right? I'd spent, years in a corporate world. And my stepping stone into that was just literally applying to the UNSW Founders Program and then, being dropped into the startup world through that. Same thing when we applied to YC, like, I didn't know anyone in Silicon Valley. We were an Australian startup that was sort of isolated in that sense, being in Australia. And you just apply, and you make those networks by simply giving it a go, essentially. So hopefully that answers that question, I guess, in the sense that, like, did law open doors? Like, in hindsight, in some ways, yes. In other ways, I guess, like, no. I mean, one of the problems I still have to this day is people go, like, you're a founder of a tech startup. Like, why did you study law? Right? Like, why? Like, it doesn't make sense. But that's that's just one of the things, I guess, about, you don't need to let what you've chosen dictate really what direction you want to go. So, yeah, there's no easy answer to whether, it's very hard to say, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, 100% agree with Aaron. I mean, having, doing a law degree initially, at university and then starting off at a law firm shouldn't really preclude you from doing anything. If anything, Aaron, whilst his experience in law and consulting taught him a bunch of commercial, operational skills, and also just the softer skills as well, which has allowed him to, I guess, flourish as a founder. And I guess,
So I'll put a caveat to that. The most important thing I learned in law and consulting was I saw the problem space that I wanted to solve in. right? And so that is super valuable, right? So if you go into industry, you go into consulting, you go into, you know, HR, tech, whatever, and in the course of that, you find a problem that is so intense that you think about it every single day, and you think it's a problem that millions of people have and that you can build a product out of. Like, that is the golden moment where you go from, you know, being just working and actually trying to make that entrepreneurial jump. So that is like, if you're talking about like what is the most valuable thing I got out of working in a corporate world, it's exactly that, being able to see the problem firsthand. And that really came out of my experience in consulting. So most of, you know, what we're doing out of Workflow 86 right now is really driven by a lot of the problems that I saw directly working with, you know, large government, large enterprise on their, you know, operations, internal processes and strategy. So yeah, that is valuable for sure.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And I guess whilst we're on the topic of talking about, you know, university internships or, you know, and working experience, open question to the panel. You know, what is your understanding of what tech careers and I guess initially what tech internships look like whilst you're at university?
I'll just quickly give the recruiter's perspective and obviously the founder's perspective now. I think I alluded to this before, but I think there's two main ones. Like, there's the ones, and again, it really helps if you've got a friend that's sort of doing a similar degree or has done a similar internship before. But I think as much as possible, and I know when you're a student, it's like, it's exciting, right? You're doing internship applications, you get the interview, and obviously when you get one, it's exciting because you just want to start. But I think it's definitely well worth trying to figure out whether you can ask this in the interview itself, try to figure it out from the cohort or whatever else. But what are you actually doing in the internship? And without repeating myself, just be really wary of internships that sound cool because they're at, you know, Westpac or Woolworths or whatever else. But when you go in there, like, what are you actually getting out of that 2.5 months or whatever it happens to be? And if there's any opportunity to figure it out, if you do find out that, hey, look, it's great because you meet a really cool cohort. You're with some really impressive people, but you're not actually given that much to actually do. And if you've got the opportunity to pick up another internship where you actually have the opportunity to get a lot more hands-on work without sort of like, you know, making the decision for you. I think from a recruiter or like a founder's perspective now, I think it's definitely at your stage in your career, if you're at university, doing internships where you're actually doing work is a lot more, I guess, invaluable to someone that's going to hire you after that, because it just saves weeks worth of training. And also from like personally, from your point of view, it helps you figure out whether you actually want to do the work that you're doing. And like a very, very different personal experience. Like I studied commerce. I thought human resource management meant dealing with people, and I'm a people person, so I was excited about it. And I did my internship, and my internship was at Citibank. It sounds really cool. I went in there and it was like I had maybe 7 or 8 meetings with the heads of HR and all these different sections. And the rest of the time I was like photocopying HR paperwork. And I was like, what is this what I'm going to be doing for the next few years? And then I did a year of that work and it was actually really mundane and like administrative work. It was horrible, which is why I got the hell out. But if you've got any opportunity to get in there and actually figure out, you know, what you'll actually be doing for the first 2, 3, 4 years of your career, I think it's crucial. Try to get as much info out of that as you can. Helps you make your decisions and potentially could save you 2 or 3 years of your life.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. Vinoth, I know that you're currently doing an internship at Amazon. I believe Amazon's the 4th largest tech company in the world. Do you want to give us a little bit of a taste of what it's like working at an Amazon?
Yeah, absolutely. I joined as an intern to stay on the PhD track at Amazon instead of some of the other full-time roles, which are easier to get. But regarding working at Amazon, there are lots of internal resources that are very helpful. It is easy to connect with other scientists at Amazon. There are hundreds of scientists at Amazon who are actively publishing and with a lot of academic experience. There's a lot of compute available via AWS, much more than could typically expect in most universities.
Mhm.
And there are lots of interesting products to work on. For example, Amazon Search, but Alexa, Amazon Prime, of course, AWS. AWS has many machine learning services for its clients. And if you're looking for a referral or otherwise interested in careers at Amazon, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email.
Thanks, Vinod. Just going through the Q&A, I think this question is more directed to Aaron and Nicole, but what was the process / experience like of opening up and starting your own startup? You know, how did this compare to working your corporate jobs? I know you would have alluded a little bit to this earlier today, but yeah, if you could explain and share a bit more, that'd be awesome.
And I might let you go first with the more structured approach, I'm sure.
When you're in a corporate job, right? It's very large. It's very much so like school. It's very much so like university, right? You have your performance is measured against metrics which other people set, right? That might be your manager. It might be, you know, whoever your direct supervisor is. They'll say, hey, in the next 6 months, I want to see you do this, this, and this. And if you do this, this, and this, then you get a tick. If you're not, then you don't, then you don't get a tick. You get an A, you get a B, you get a C, whatever, right? So it's essentially very, very structured. And when you're working, for example, in a law firm, it's also very structured. In the first 6 months, we want to see you develop these skills. We want to see you build these many hours. In consulting, it's very similar. Like, we want to see you do this much. We see you develop these skills. And then, every 3 months, we'll have a performance review and we'll see how you guys are going. You're going from that environment where what you should be doing is told to you to really an environment where, like, beyond the fact that you want to solve this problem, everything else you have to figure out yourself, right? And so I think that's where a lot of people who have only been used to working within a very structured environment, whether that's high school and university, and then going to corporate, like, they really struggle because, like, there is no manager to tell you, hey, this is the first thing you need to do when you do your startup, right? These are all the mistakes that you can make when you make your first hire. Here's how you can stuff up by raising from the wrong investors, or here are all the mistakes you're going to make when you build your product. Here are all the red flags that you might have when you're trying to find a co-founder. Like, so much of it is just you learn by simply doing. And there's no course, there's no, you get an A, you get a special gold star sticker. Like, the reward is you survive or your company fails. Like, that's literally it. So I think that's the big difference in terms of that jump. And in terms of, like, the logistics of how you actually jump from a corporate job into startups, like, this is like to do your own thing. I think it's an unfortunate fact, but I do think you have to be in a relatively privileged position. Like, not everyone can just, quit their job and then chase their startup. But there are a lot of ways in which, you can get the initial funding or the initial support that you need to actually, figure stuff out in those early days. So for me, it was, just applying to the UNSW Founders Program, which is an accelerator program that UNSW runs. You apply to it, you pitch your idea to them. And I think, like, the top 5 or the top 10 startups, they give you 25 grand. They put you in a program to, work through your idea and, give you mentorship and everything. But I think it's more about, like, they just give you some breathing room, some space to actually, figure out and learn stuff on your idea or your startup or what you actually want to do. So I would say, like, that's essentially the process. Like, you just need to know that you're going from something where what you need to do is being told to you, to an environment where really you set your metrics, you set your performance, you set what, you wake up and, like, okay, there's no manager to tell me what to do today. I actually need to figure out what I need to do to push the business, to move the needle. The good part of that is like in the last 10 years or so, there's just this huge amounts of resources about, how to do startups, right? There's hundreds of great books. If anyone wants to sort of really start getting into this, like Y Combinator has some really great resources. They run a program called Startup School, which you can, apply to, and it will teach you basically all the basics of what you need to do in order to, start a startup, building an MVP, finding a co-founder and everything. So like there's more and more resources, but I guess the point still comes down to the fact that you need to go out and find those resources yourselves. Like a manager will not email that to you, to your inbox. A teacher won't be assigning you a syllabus. Like no one's going to tell you what to do. It's really about you driving yourself as soon as you make that jump. So yeah.
Yep. And just continue on from the last point. I think you've sort of half covered this anyway, but I think one really important point that I'd like to raise is resilience. And I think our school does a really good job and a really bad job at this. So I think going to Sydney High, like you kind of know that getting to the end of it, unless you massively stuff up, you're going to get a relatively good ATAR, got a relatively good uni, and do pretty well for yourself, right? So I think in that way we're kind of coddled a little bit. But I think on the other side, if you guys are the Year 12 students, if you've got any friends or family members that go to other schools, especially non-selective schools, right? If you think about what you do at our school, you've got your academics, you've most likely got tutoring on top of that. You'll have, debating and chess or whatever else, and you'll likely have one, if not two, full-time sports, right? So the amount of stuff, I guess I'm literally using the word stuff here, but the amount of stuff that you pack into your 6 years of high school, I reckon it's about 2, maybe 3 times the amount of stuff that a lot of other high school students fit in, right? So you're used to doing a lot with your time and being efficient, which is awesome. But I think resilience, it's really difficult. Like I think coming back to what Aaron said, it's like something that you can't learn about yourself, or you can't get better at it unless you actually go through it. And obviously, look, studying for exams and getting grades that you're not happy with or whatever is part of it. But I think so. Just very quickly, I guess my journey, going into straight out of uni, went into a job that I wasn't really happy with, got into a job recruitment, which is a bit more salesy, a bit more sort of negotiation and communication based. Loved it, did that for a couple of years, and then essentially started my own business doing the same work. And I was literally talking to my old colleague from that business this morning. And I think that sort of, and Aaron, like I know anyone in startups will talk about the highs and lows or the roller coaster of being in a startup or a small business. So I literally went from making more money than I would in a year and 4 months to then just sort of thinking I was going crazy because I just had no motivation to work anymore, and figuring out, wait a minute, I'm not going crazy. This is just normal psychology, right? Like if no one's telling you to work, if you don't need to work, then maybe you just don't want to work. Like you're just lazy at that time, and that's okay. So I think just like accepting the highs and lows and sort of like just doing it for yourself and showing or improving your resilience is really important. And I think the last point, if you are someone that is into, I guess, the entrepreneurial side and you think it might be cool to either work in or have your own startup one day, I think the younger you are, and again, go back to that year 7 and 12 example, you guys are in year 12, think about how little or how young the year 7s look, right? So when you're 18, 19, 20 and in first and second year especially, you've got all this freedom and you've got nothing to lose at that stage. So if you are into that stuff, have a crack at it. Like I'm sure there's an entrepreneurship society of some sorts. Obviously, Aaron just mentioned UNSW founders or whatever it is. Have a crack at it early, because when you get into year 3 and 4 of uni, you're going to have internships, you're going to have other commitments that start taking up your time. So while you're young at uni, have a crack at it. And the other thing I'd say, that this is my personal favorite podcast, is a podcast called My First Million. So whether you're someone who likes to read books or listen to podcasts, whatever, if you are entrepreneurial, like there is an unlimited amount of content out there these days. So whether you like YouTube videos or podcasts that you want to listen to or read books, start like, or maybe after your HSC, but just start. Like when you've got some downtime, it's like, I know for me, I spent 10 years bloody listening to like sport radio or whatever else, and now all I do is listen to like business podcasts. So if you are interested in it, it's never too early to start. There's more than enough information, and obviously when the time's right, we've got a community of old boys that are obviously out there and able to help as well.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Aaron. There's one more question that I'll address quickly. Any good work experience / internship programs for students currently in year 10 to 12, especially in the fintechs, finance or tech sector? I'd definitely encourage you to check out universities for whatever scholarships they may have. A lot of universities have co-op programs where they have structured study and work placement programs as well. So that they're a good place to start. Just in the interest of time, we've run out, but I'm going to throw to Max just for some closing comments.
Sorry, guys. I turned on the camera, but not the microphone. So firstly, thank you so much to Aaron, to Nakul, to Vinoff, and Kerry for making your time today to come and talk to. I think obviously predominantly year 12s, I think, but really nice to see that we got some earlier year parents and students as well. I hope you guys got something out of this, got a sort of an insight into what is a career in tech, and what does that path look like in through law, through competitions, through all sorts of different ways. And the idea of these sessions is you get that insight, and it gives you more opportunity to sort of think about, well, try and answer those questions that Aaron posed of like, well, what are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing for someone else or for yourself? So housekeeping, this is as Kerry said, first of 6 sessions. The next session is tomorrow, same time, medicine, different link. So if you're joining that, please use that other link. Please do register on the website if you haven't already done so. And please feel free to kind of reach out to the Old Boys Union if you want. So if you have any help with some of those internship and other sort of questions, if you want to get involved, if you want to help, if you want to sort of some one-to-one mentorship, look out. We will be posting more information about mentorship programs coming up, and feel free to give us feedback on this session. So drop an email. You can use the email shsobu.mentorship@gmail.com. All right, I'll let everyone head off. And again, thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
See ya.